Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheilamac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.SHEILAMAC.com today.
If you are just tuning in, this is NBC SHEILAMACSHOW here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheilamac, and today I wanted to share with you about my favorite new tea. It is lovemysupertea.com, and let me let you hear a little bit more about it.
Tehibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau d'Arco Super Tea helps you build the red corpuscles in the blood, which can carry oxygen to our organs and cells. Our organs and cells need oxygen to regenerate themselves. The immune system needs oxygen to develop, and cancer dies in oxygen. So the tea is great for healthy people, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. A 1-pound package of tea is $34.95 plus shipping. To order, please visit lovemysupertea.com. That's love, L-O-V-E, my, M-Y, super, SUPERTEA.com. So the complete website is lovemysupertea.com, or call 818-288-4128, Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5, California time. That's lovemysupertea.com at 818-288-4128.
Ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheilamac Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen.
Welcome to the Sheilamac Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheilamac, and today we have special guest Chris Miles of Money Ripples. Chris is the anti-financial advisor. He teaches entrepreneurs and professionals how to get their money working for them today. He's an author, podcast host of the Chris Miles Money Show, and has been featured in U.S. News, CNN Money, Entrepreneurs on Fire, Bigger Pockets, and has a proven reputation with his company, Money Ripples, getting his clients fast financial results. All right, welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks. Such an honor to be here.
All right. And my show actually came about based on my new best-selling book, and that's Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And really, in life, we have these times, and it's really connected to our finances, whether it's a divorce, loss of a loved one, career change, COVID, all these things. And it happens in everyone's life. And that's where when one area has trouble, we tend to have trouble in our finances. And relationship trouble, boom, there goes your finances. So I'd like to ask you, before we really get started, if you have a time in your business or personal life where you experienced a tough situation and how you got back on track.
Oh, heck yeah. I definitely have. 20 years being a business owner, how can you not have some ups and downs, right? Two big ones. I actually had a divorce 6 years ago. That one was emotionally like the hardest thing I've ever gone through. But financially, the hardest thing I ever went through was actually the last recession, right? It was 2007 through 2009. Rough time. It's funny because I started out, I actually started out 20 years ago as the traditional financial advisor, telling people how to save everything, spend nothing, be cheap, and just, have your life suck. Right. I was teaching that kind of stuff. Eventually I went away from that, did the opposite, was able to become financially independent in 2006 when I was just 28 years old. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with my life? And so I ended up coming out of retirement in 2007 to teach people how to get out of the rat race. But then, of course, when the recession hit, and I had done some things that actually, got cut off those streams of income, right? So it was like that perfect storm where all of a sudden I went from like millionaire to upside down millionaire. And I was in over $1 million in debt in the whole, about 15 to 16,000 a month, each month. And I had no money and no credit. I was basically all bootstraps and no bra straps, right?
There you go.
And I was having to rebuild. I didn't file for bankruptcy, but man, I mean, having to dig out of that $1 million debt hole was hard, and that was tough. And not to mention the mind games you go through, because remember, I was the guy that was supposed to have it all figured out. I was the one out of the rat race, back in it. I couldn't just keep teaching people how to get out of the rat race when I was in the rat race again myself. So I had to change the tune of my messaging and everything in my business. But luckily, because I was getting resourceful, I was teaching others how to get resourceful. I was just teaching them my mess. That was becoming my message. And I was able to dig myself out while also helping others dig out of that situation. And now to date, just from the crap I went through, I actually was able to be financially independent again by 2016. So twice I was able to retire by the time I was 39. But the cool thing is that now over the last 11 years, out of like 850 clients, they've freed up over $250 million of money that's either passive income or just cash flow they can have to launch their business, or, get things moving, or just breathe better, breathe easier, that kind of thing.
Right. That's great. And, you think what money, some people have a thing about money. They have a mental construct that money is bad, or money is good, or money is this, money is that. And it tends to be a block, or almost like a thermostat of, they can only earn so much. And that's too much then. And past that is, whoa, that's too much. And so what do you think about that? Did you have to overcome that mentality about money at all, or change the story you had?
Yeah, in some ways I did, because I was always taught growing up that, money doesn't grow on trees. What do you think I am, made of money, right? Or my favorite was when my dad said, you know what, because I'm such a good father, I gave up that Corvette to have you kids, right? Like, all those kind of little stories and money games they put in your head. And so money was always taught to me that there was never enough of it, right? At the same time, you hear people say that, money's the root of all evil, and that, rich people are just greedy jerks, right? And I found out that can be nothing but farther from the truth. In fact, it's usually the opposite. Usually the most greediest people I've met are broke people, because all they can do is think about themselves and their financial situation, right?
Yes.
And I've been there. Trust me. I mean, I've met very few people that've been over $1 million in the hole. Most people are like, well, I've been, you don't know what it's like to be broke, Chris. I'm like, excuse me. During that time, like, I had my property foreclosed on. The guy knocked on the door, said, when can you get out? Right before we're about to have our 4th child the next week. Like, I know I've had cars repoed, like multiple cars, by the way.
Wow.
So like, I know what it's like, I've been in that situation before. But yeah, there's so much head trash around that. And, when people say that money is the root of all evil, for example, right? I always have to ask the question that Ayn Rand asked in the book Atlas Shrugged, where she said, well, if money is the root of all evil, what's the root of money? And she, and she has the character in the book go through this whole speech. But when you think about it, the cause of money is not money. Money doesn't make money. You don't rub 2 little dollar bills and baby pops out, right? It's money comes from creating value, like serving people, solving problems, and creating value for people in a way where they want to exchange money to get that thing from you, because it's worth more to them than those pieces of paper in their wallet. Right. So if you understand that, you start to realize, no, actually, the root of money is all good. All good things come from money. Therefore, does that mean that good is evil? And that just, throws you in a whole philosophical loop that means that pretty much you're screwed up. You didn't have it right. It's not truth. The truth is that money doesn't do anything. It's just a magnifier of the soul. It only makes you more of who you already are. If you're already in scarcity, it's going to put you in more scarcity. So you should be focusing more on how do I get in a more abundant state now, and then focus on really getting past those beliefs, understanding that, wait, if I look at this from a real life situation, money actually is evidence. This is really just a receipt of either service given or service to be given, right?
Mhm.
That's all it is.
Yes, yes, that is our exchange right now. And there's something in my life. I never really chased money. I
Hmm.
did what my heart told me to do, and I enjoyed my life.
Hmm.
I always had lots of blessings and good investments and fun things, but it was fun and it was for other purposes. There was always a service behind it.
Yeah.
And, I had gift stores at 23 and I opened
Mhm.
them. Why? Because I wanted to create this open source learning for kids that were emancipating from foster care so they could get better jobs. And that was the heart. And that to me was why it was successful. It had very little to do with buying gifts or
Oh
selling
yeah.
people gifts. It was serving people in the community. And that's why then I had 5 stores and bought all those
Mhm.
buildings and owned them free and clear from the profit. So it's a different place. And then I see people that they come after and everything is about how can I get more? How can I take?
Mhm.
How can I? And they're taking, but they're not giving back.
Yes.
And people run away and money runs away. The whole energy shifts
Mhm.
and they say, hey, join this club of let's go chase this. And it's
Mhm.
like, why would I have to do that? And I'd have these fun little mantras. Money rolls up the street, and I used to be at the top of a hill. Money rolls up the hill, and then it knocks on my door and jumps in my pockets. It's awesome. And
Uh-huh.
then I go live the rest of my day. 9 to 5. Why would I do that? So,
Yeah.
and it just happened. So it's a state of being and a state of mind.
Sure is. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see a lot of people, and this was my number one problem I had, even as a financial advisor, right? Because as financial advisors, like, here's how you make money, make money, make money. Like, they're always driving that in your head. Well, the problem was that I believed that money was a zero sum game. There always had to be a winner and a loser, right? It was never a win-win transaction in my mind. I always thought somebody had to lose for you to win and vice versa.
Mm,
So if I want to make more money, I got to be a jerk to screw people over, right? I believe it was exploitation or luck that made you wealthy.
right.
But the opposite would then have to be true, is that if I want to be a benevolent, good person, I've got to sacrifice myself so that
Mm,
others make the money.
mm,
And what was an interesting thing for me is that, in 2006, right before I became financially independent the first time, was that when I realized that the real formula was that dollars follow value created, right? Like, how do I create more value for more people, right?
right.
And how do I look for the win-win? When I started to do that, I started to realize it wasn't just about serving, because I had no problem doing that. I had no problem being the martyr, right? The money
Oh,
martyr.
mhm.
But when I started to ask for it in return, so I could have that full flow, kind of like you're saying, like, there's that full flow of money, right? It's not just about giving, but you got to be willing to receive it too. And I was
Yes.
afraid to receive. So, like, what I did, one of the strategies I did that freed up my time drastically was, I remember a friend asked me, he said, I quit being a financial advisor. So all I was doing was being a mortgage broker. I was teaching ballroom dancing on the side. And then I was also doing like stock trading, like doing some of the stuff that way. And he asked me, he's like, well, do you like doing mortgages? Because he asked me, he's like, well, if money were no issue in your life, what would you spend your time doing? And I said, well, I'd probably teach ballroom dancing. He's
Nice.
like, well, why don't you do more of that? He's like, what about the mortgages you're doing right now? I said, well, I like teaching people and I love getting them the results, but I hate paperwork. Please don't give me any more paperwork, right? He's like, well, why don't you just find somebody who does like doing paperwork?
Yep.
I said, well, I can't do that because in scarcity world, I couldn't share money, right? Because there's only so much to go around. There was too little. There's a scarcity of it. But then he's like, no, just there's nerds out there that like doing paperwork, but would be willing to split the deal with you. And so I found that guy within our brokerage. He's like, yeah, I'll split you 50-50 on this. I'm like, great. Well, I'll serve them up to you. They're already ready to do the refinance on their mortgage. You just have to, do all the paperwork and everything. He's like, great, done. And then I'd spend half an hour to an hour with that client. And next thing I know, I get $1,000 or $1,500 or more check from the company. I'm thinking, well, that was easy. Why wasn't it this easy before? But I had to ask. I had to be willing to say, hey, would you be willing to split this? Like, would you be willing to share? And when I did that, I made so much more money in less time. I was literally living a 4-hour work week before Tim Ferriss wrote his book, And it was mind boggling because I'd worked overtime hours to make the same amount of money I was making just working 3 or 4 hours a week.
Yes. Yes. And that's the same with real estate. which I somehow got into myself with
Mhm.
the stores. I kept buying the buildings, and every store owner was like, how did you do that? They were twice my age because I opened
Uh-huh.
at 23. So imagine, I said, well, let me get my license. And I started helping them. But I had transactional brokers. So I had people,
Yes.
you pay them to do the work. I just did the, connecting and okay, yeah, buy this, buy that. And I would refer out and I would still make decent money, but I
Yeah.
had time for my family.
Mhm.
And when you look back, that's kind of like what matters most, at least for me, it was. And so that made a big difference. And I was still able, that paid for all the kids to go to college. So it worked. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just, but it's that letting go
Mhm.
of the control of everything and then finding the right people also, I think.
Yes. Yeah, isn't
Yes.
it amazing? You went from a transactional mindset to a residual mindset, right?
Hmm.
And they're so different. In fact, if you can't open your mind to it, you'll never find it. You'll always be that transactional person. And I see that all the time with people that we've worked with where they'll be multimillionaires sometimes, right? And still they're broke. They're
Hmm.
flat broke. They have no freedom because
Hmm.
yeah, they get paid well and they don't even have to spend a lot. But the problem is that that money doesn't actually pay them. Like if that job were gone or that business were gone, they would
Yeah.
be broke. And you
Oh,
got to have that passive income coming in.
yes. It's something that once you figure out your passive income streams, you
Mhm.
kind of get used to that.
Mhm.
And you want to just keep doing that. All my children are creating their own passive income now.
Oh, I love
And
it.
because they're, oh no, I want to invest in something and get some property and get some cash flow going this way and that
Mhm.
way. And they're doing all kinds of fun things. They even have the vending machines at the college
Uh-huh.
campus now, and they're making good money. And
Yeah.
there's something about this pride, self-sufficiency, even in their young 20s, like really young kids that I have still, barely in college, that I
Mhm.
did it myself. I bought my own car. That's right. It's a difference. I didn't give you the car. It's
Yeah.
just, there's a different feeling,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a cool thing.
It
And
really is.
there's mistakes, and it's like it's okay if you make a mistake. You know,
Mhm.
that's we're as parents, like I got you, but only when you need that.
Yeah. You can't, I mean, that's a lesson you can never pay money for. I mean, literally you couldn't because you have to have them figure it out themselves, right? And it's not like you leave them alone. Like you trained them and taught them along the way.
Hmm.
Like I always admire my wife. I mean, she has her 11-year-old, investing, first she bought some silver coins, right? She wanted to have like real value, real, not fake money, right? Not the funny money that we see called the dollar bill.
Right.
But she started there, but then they started taking the conversation deeper. Like, hey, what if we go in? Maybe you buy a 1% share in buying a property, and you get paid 1% of the cash flow. And how about
Mm-hmm.
if you want, 1% share in like an oil investment, or something like that, and get paid off that. And it's such a different thing than like, hey, we put that $500 sitting in a, bank account earning point nothing percent, and then they're like, wow, I made 50 cents this year. Yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you. And I'll have to pay taxes on that 50 cents. Thank you so
Right.
much. Off that
And then
500
factor
bucks.
in our inflation right now, which is ridiculous. It's like off the charts. So you're like, and I still lost.
Yeah, exactly. Like you didn't make it back. It's a totally different mindset. And so that's the thing. If you can fix your own money crap, you can be able to get your kids on a much better foot than you've ever been on yourself. And
Oh, yes.
that's
Yes.
the goal.
So now I'd love to hear about your Money Ripples program and how that works.
Yeah. So what we do is try to get people to work because they want to, not because they have to.
Hmm.
Right. Create passive income basically
Yes.
so that you're work optional.
Mm.
And so that's really what we're teaching. Because every financial, that's why I'm an anti-financial advisor, right? Because every financial advisor tell you this, spend nothing, save everything, save it in the stock market, save it forever. Hopefully someday you might have something.
Yeah.
But the truth is that, especially if you're a business owner, you already see through the crap because you're like, I can invest in my business and make more money and I control all the risk, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
the problem is that, if you keep investing in your business, eventually you find you're just creating more of a job, right?
Mm.
You got to make sure that that business, can create residual income or something like that, but also take that money and create passive income outside your business. Because
Right.
if for whatever reason somebody decides that you're non-essential, like we
Mm.
saw last year, and now they're even talking about cops being non-essential and
Yeah.
and medical workers, like, hey, we got to lay off medical workers, like come on, these were the essential people last year, and now they're non-essential.
Right.
Who's safe, right? And so this is why you've got to have multiple streams of income. And so that's what we do is, how do we create multiple streams of income? It could be in the real estate market, right? And I'm not saying like the real estate that the average Joe talks about. I'm talking about like you actually get paid, and you're not paying huge prices to get paid very little. Like I always try to go for at least a 1% a month return on when I buy a property, right? Like if I put $30,000 down on that property, I want to be able to get $300 a month, and I get to take that tax free.
Yeah.
I'm not paying taxes on that money, Now that doesn't sound super sexy, but if you got 100,000, that's $1,000 a month. That's $1,000 you don't have to create actively through your business, and that builds and grows. And, like I said, I've got people investing my money in like raw land right now. Like my 100,000 turned into 170 in just 2 months, like just doing that kind of stuff. I mean, we've got, a 15% return on like some of like, mineral rights. I mentioned like oil type stuff, right? And natural gas. Like we're getting paid monthly on that. There's so many ways to make money that when you look at the stock market, that's like mutual funds that are high risk, mediocre, really 7% returns. Maybe, really the S&P 500 has only done 8.4% in the last 30 years, average, right? With the best stock market we've ever had in history.
Right.
And that's it. Why would I take high risk and make a whopping 8% maybe when I could be making 10, 12+%, doing things with less risk, more certainty and actual cash flow versus, hey, you know what? If you keep saving up for the next 5 million years, you might be a millionaire, right? Like, what kind of crap is that?
Right. Yes. And, there's something about it when you learn how to invest as you go slowly. And it's nice to go with a group or work with someone that knows the way to kind of guide you when you're first starting. And then over time, you get better at it. So it's something that it comes naturally over time. And it's wonderful. Now, when I lost everything, I had lost a house to the Ventura fire, my car, and my poor little cat, all with that darn fire. And starting over, my friends were like, oh, you got to get a loan. You got to get into debt. You got to do all these things. I said, well, I got like 35,000 in my pocket in my account. That's it. Everything else, I had just bought the house cash. So I was like, okay. And, I was out.
Yeah.
I said, I'm just going to buy this prefab home up in the canyon in California.
Yeah.
It was 96,000, but they dropped it. I got it for 30,000.
Wow.
I fixed it up and made it into 3 units. The 3 units were then on the Airbnb platform. I was a super host making 6,000 to 8,000 a month for 3 years. And then after the 3 years time, did a 1031 exchange, sold it for $298,000 and bought your investment property. And my friends were like, they were so concerned. They were like, oh, honey, we need to get you like a job at the grocery store. I was like, I have other property. I just didn't want to tap into the other property. And, at that time I was kind of playing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is possible even in California where you think that's not possible. It's like, watch, let's make it impossible. Let's have fun. And
and when you mentioned that 1031 exchange where you just moved the equity for the properties into other properties, right? You didn't pay any taxes on that. Where, if you get IRAs, you have to pay taxes on that money.
Now, is that something they were talking about changing that law? And I haven't looked into that law.
It hasn't changed yet. I mean, they're playing with it. Like, how do we tax the rich and give to the poor, right? That kind of thing, the whole Robin Hood thing.
Right.
That's the thing. That's one reason why I don't trust like 401ks, IRAs, any of that stuff. Because people are like, what? You should do that. Why? Because if anything we've learned, and we know this in business, right? If you follow the majority, you're probably going to be wrong. Right? Because we follow the majority, that means we're going to be slaves to a job the rest of our lives. We follow the majority, we're going to put our money in the stock market, which has already been proven. People are not retiring with this. That's why I left. After 4 years being a financial advisor, I saw the evidence. And if that wasn't evidence enough, ask the financial advisors, they can retire without their commissions. Right? Take out the commissions. That you can't leave in the commissions. They'll say, oh, I can retire. Like, that's because you got trails and renewals and everything. What if you just had your mutual funds only? Could you really retire off that for 30 years? Right? You have to be clear so they don't like try to finagle you. The answer is no. almost in every single case, I very rarely ever, out of thousands and thousands of advisors, ever met somebody who could say confidently, yes. Even when I found a guy, I thought I found an old man that could say yes because he said, "Oh, I'm getting that, and I have my mutual funds doing it." Then when I asked him deeper questions, found out he had an army pension that he was getting paid on, and he had a company pension he was getting paid on, plus the trails renewals from the insurance company. So he didn't even need the money in the stock market. That's why he was able to retire, not because of the stock market.
Oh,
So
right.
why would we do the stuff that has already been proven not to work, which is what the majority do? They do things that don't work and do what the minority does. They're the people that actually are successful. And that's really what we're telling people to do is get away from the mainstream because the mainstream hasn't worked. Why do that? That's insanity. It's just has never worked. Don't keep doing it.
It keeps you trapped.
It does.
In the debt and the tax. I mean, I'm like 100% debt free. Cars are debt free. All my kids have their cars paid for. It's, it's nice, but it took a lot of work.
Yes.
and I do what I love. The show is something to help people get back on track and give them free advice. And it's something it's really coming from a heart space, but it's something I love. So that's what it is. That's the freedom where you can go and contribute and do things that are fun. I do fun things that I love to do because I would be bored if I can't do nothing. Nothing just doesn't work.
Same here.
so that's it.
That's why I have my podcast. There's the same thing. It was like that labor of love. Like I got to do something, right?
Yes. So that's it. And that's important. I think there's something where it starts in school. It starts with our young children. And the reality is that we are the teachers, not the teachers at school. So what you bring to your children with financial literacy and life skills is going to be so much more important than stuff that's going on in school that may not even be aligned with what you want. That, do I want to teach you to go to school and sit still and follow the rules and never question anything? Or do I want you to have discernment?
Yeah.
So
it's true.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the education system, right? Like we can't rely on the teachers to do that because I've been invited by teachers that said, "Hey, I know what you do. I'm teaching a finance class. I'm a teacher. I don't know anything about money other than the curriculum they give me.
Right.
Like you teach from your experience what these kids need to know, right? And how they can actually make money. Because a lot of them are like, I want to get rich. Well, that's great. That sounds good in theory. We all want to get rich, but how is that actually made possible? And it's true. It's got to start with you. You've got to be the example first, and then you've got to teach that to your children and create a legacy that lives on beyond you.
Yep. Makes all the difference. So now, how can people get involved with your show, learn more, or sign up for your programs? How does that work?
Yeah, you can go check out on iTunes, YouTube, look up the Chris Miles Money Show. I've got like 560 episodes, so take a pick. So we got that. And then we've also got my website, moneyripples.com, that you can go check out. There's information on there as well. And different ways you can learn more to break that mindset, to try to learn something different.
And do you have tips for maybe somebody that's listening in that got hit hard with all this Corona stuff and is now maybe doing a career shift or starting over again? You started over and had to remake your money. What tips do you have for someone just trying to figure things out now?
Yeah, I've actually got a free ebook on that website, moneyripples.com, called Beyond Rice and Beans, 7 Secrets to Free Up Cash Today. It's kind of a little slap in the face to Dave Ramsey to say, hey, we don't have to live in scarcity. We don't have to live a life of lack. You can still be abundant and be a wise steward of the money that you have. And so in that, I actually talk about the seven main ways that not just myself, but even all my clients that freed up like over $250 million, right? How they did it. So I actually go into that, and it's a very short read. So
Nice.
I'm not a lengthy person when it comes to writing. I hate writing. So it's 28 pages because I put page breaks and pictures in it.
Okay. That sounds great. All right. And we are coming to the end of our time. So I'd love to ask, one of the questions I always ask is, if you go back in time, what would you tell your younger, let's say 10-year-old self preparing for life? What advice would you give?
10-year-old self, I'd say, don't buy those baseball cards. That's what I would say, probably. I was buying into those thinking they were collectibles, they were going to be worth something someday, and that was a big mistake, right? But seriously, I mean, really, like if I would have been I was really good at like working hard and making money even at a young age. If I would have focused more on buying real assets, not just sports cards and things like that, I could have had a much better start. I could have probably paid for my college, without just saving it the normal ways. But I would just say that it's like, hey, start off. Don't just go buy this, the crap. Let's buy some real things here.
Right. That's wonderful. And again, one more time before we go, could you share your website for everyone listening in?
Yep, it's www.moneyripples.com.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris, for being a guest on the show. And for those tuning in, we'll be back after these messages. All right.
Money matters. Finance. Geneva showed up at my vacation rental with a car full of her belongings, everything she hadn't been able to fit in her small storage unit down the road. She told me she'd been moving from one vacation rental home to another, occasionally staying at friends' homes in between. She'd felt guided to visit me and had booked my rental for 3 days, but noticed it was available for the month. I don't have all the money at once, she told me. Can I pay as I go? I couldn't help but tell her yes. I knew she was in the right place. After she unpacked and got settled in, we sat outside on the deck for coffee and snacks. Soon, Geneva started to share about her own rock-bottom situation. She told me she used to own a beautiful 3-bedroom home and had been happily married with 2 grown sons. She had worked part-time for the school district and her husband was a props designer. She started to cry a little, but tried to hide it as, with a deep sigh, she continued. Geneva said she really loved that man and thought she had a rock-solid, honest husband. He was a bit of a slob and sometimes got angry with the kids, but he was a good provider and always very loving. She always trusted him and kept herself busy working and raising their kids. One day, the power went out at the house. When Geneva called the company to have a repairman come out, they told her that her service had been turned off due to unpaid bills. When her husband, who'd always paid the bills, got home, he explained that it had been a misunderstanding and he'd taken care of it, putting the bills on autopay so she didn't have to bother with them. Soon after that, Geneva went to make a phone call and discovered that the family's cell phone service had been disconnected. She was upset and concerned, so she drove over to her husband's job site. They told her that he hadn't been assigned to that site that day, even though that's where he told her he'd been working for the past 3 weeks. When he returned home, Geneva asked her husband, "How was work?" "Great," he answered. "We got a lot done and the project should be finished in a week or 2. She asked where he was working, and he told her the same site she had visited earlier that day. That's when it all came out. For most of their marriage, instead of working extra long hours, he was actually visiting his other family. Yes, he had a girlfriend, and together over the last 10 years or so of their marriage, he and she had 3 other children. Geneva had been minding her business, living what she felt was a pretty good and honest life, when boom, the bottom fell out from under her. Then, just like that, her husband left her alone in the shambles of their old life. Because he'd been in charge of their money and paying the bills, Geneva hadn't realized how behind they were. Everywhere she looked, all she saw were final notices and bill collectors. They were upside down on the house. She didn't have enough money to get current on the mortgage, and her credit was ruined. She said she went into a deep depression from the emotional and financial fallout. She just didn't know what to do. She didn't even know where to start. Geneva admitted that she drank too much for a while, oversleeping and calling out from her part-time work. When there was a downsizing wave, she was the first one to get fired. At this point in her story, Geneva was in full tears, with little bits of laughter and waves of anger, too. As she mentioned her ex, she slammed her fist on my park bench. When she came to stay with me, Geneva was working for a temp agency and taking part-time cleaning jobs on the side. She joked about how she'd seen a van advertising a topless maid service and admitted she was inches away from calling to apply just for the extra money. It was a joke, yet it spoke to a serious feeling. How on earth could she ever get ahead? The true cost. Situations we can't control or predict, ones that have serious financial consequences, happen more often than we'd like. We don't want to believe that this can happen to us. It's not something you'd ever want to think about or prepare for. Geneva had certainly never thought it was possible, but if the unexpected happens, you may find yourself in a financial pinch or even a financial catastrophe. Your financial circumstances change throughout your life, but when those changes are accompanied or even caused by a major life shift, that can lead to a rock bottom. Bouncing back from a financial rock bottom consists of 3 steps, which we'll look at in this chapter. Step 1. Evaluate where you are financially. The activity at the end of the chapter walks you through this step. Step 2. Use your resourcefulness to get where you need to be to support yourself and your family if you have children. Step 3. Once you have that stability, you can start looking for other opportunities to invest and potentially grow your money. Face the dragon. Whether you are going through a catastrophic event or financial hardship, the first step is to take an honest look at your financial picture. Maybe your husband did the finances. Maybe you did the finances and he helped do something else, but now you have to take over everything. If you've never had to manage your finances entirely on your own, or even if you have been in charge of your finances, you can learn how to manage them better. When you're going through the finances, it can feel like you have nothing left over after paying your bills. You almost want to give up or not even look. Just throw the bills in a drawer and worry about them when the money shows up. Then, once the drawer is full, you throw them on the floor of the closet, wondering where the money is going to come from. Your financial situation gets worse and worse until you can't even qualify to buy a vacuum. It happens. Financial stress is hard and scary. But there's something really empowering about taking an honest look at your financial situation and learning where to go from here. I call this facing the dragon. If you are behind in your bills, there are ways you can negotiate or make arrangements for your payments. People are so afraid to just pick up the phone and call the bill collector or credit card company. Call American Express and say, "Hey, I had a death in my family and I need more time to pay." Oftentimes, they'll give it to you. If your credit isn't good, I strongly suggest working with a credit repair service. Most of these services will actually write letters to your creditors on your behalf, removing or consolidating payments. After they get down to any bills that cannot be removed, many of them will actually get on a 3-way call and help you go through the negotiations to lower your payments. If you are going about this alone, it may be best to have a friend or family member that you trust get on the line with you or review what to say prior to calling in. I've worked with hundreds of clients who've had to repair their credit to qualify for a home loan or who had to rebuild their score due to a rock-bottom scenario. They all said it was far easier than they had imagined and that once they got through the first call or two, they no longer had the stress or fear. Our minds tend to jump to the worst-case scenario very quickly. But once we face the dragon, take that really painful first step, and do the work, it's a huge relief as some of that stress disappears. Taking this first step will give you a sense of getting back into control as you rebuild your financial house. But it doesn't happen all at once. If this is where you've hit rock bottom, it takes time to get through it and start going back up. What you have to do isn't really hard, but it might take a few days, weeks, or even months of making calls and arranging payment plans until you're back in the driver's seat. Ask for help. Just because you're learning to manage your finances yourself doesn't mean that you won't need help. You don't have to do it all on your own. One way to make a financial situation feel less scary is to get advice on how to handle it. A financial planner, credit counselor, money manager, accountant, or attorney may be able to help you come up with a strategic plan. If you can't afford to see one of these professionals, or if you want to take more control, the activity at the end of this chapter will help you come up with your own plan. And you can visit the resources section of my website, www.sheilamac.com/finances, for links to free, basic financial services. You are disempowered when you don't have a plan. The longer you go without a plan, throwing bills in a drawer, the more you mess up your credit and cause other trouble in your life that you don't need. The sooner you face it and do the work, the better. When you do have that plan in place, you just follow it. It's cleaner that way, and it's empowering. The IRS or the president? When I was 24 years old and my daughter was a few months old, I was in the second year of running my gift store business. I had figured out how to design the store, make it beautiful, and serve the customers, but I really sucked at accounting. I was making enough money, so accuracy wasn't a big deal for me. I didn't worry about counting every penny. I knew what my account balance was, but when I did my state taxes, I would just round off the numbers for income and expenses. I didn't know you aren't supposed to do that. One day, 4 people wearing black suits and almost invisible headsets walked in. They were not my typical gift store customers. My stomach dropped. Had I screwed up on my taxes? Was the IRS coming to take away my store or me? I considered grabbing the baby and running, but instead remembered how to follow the training I gave my staff and treat every customer like a movie star. I'm glad I didn't run. Then President Clinton walked into my store. He had been speaking at Glendale Community College nearby and then visited some local businesses. The suits were his Secret Service staff. I gave him a gift of Crabtree and Evelyn fragrances for men and the top-selling ladies' fragrance for Hillary. He held the baby and we took a picture. That was sadly lost in the fire I told you about in a previous chapter. The few minutes of fear I had when the suits walked in convinced me I needed someone else to manage my accounting. The next day, I hired a CPA. One of the first things he told me was, "You have to use real numbers." It's kind of a giveaway when everything ends in 0. Ideally, you can get the help you need when things are good, so you already have a plan in place in case things go bad. Be resourceful. A financial rock bottom can happen at any time and be caused by any number of situations. Whether your life shift is planned or unplanned, an unexpected medical emergency, going through a divorce, death of a spouse or partner, or getting laid off from a job, that life shift is also causing a shift in your finances. To better deal with life circumstances, you may choose to shift from full-time to part-time work, resulting in lower income. The shift from 2 incomes to 1, or to simply having less income than you're used to, requires both a psychological and financial adjustment. If you lose a job, you can evaluate your situation and look for what you want to do next. But when you're not necessarily looking for a new job, or when a spouse loses his job and is going through an extended period of unemployment, or one of you goes back to school, you have to be resourceful in how you approach your life plan. Tony Robbins says, "It's not the lack of resources, it's your lack of resourcefulness that stops you." And to hear the rest of that story, get a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And if you get it from the link on my website, you will get extra free gifts with each chapter. And the website to go to is www.sheilamac.com. If you are just tuning in, this is NBC's Sheilamac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheilamac,
And I have some news for you. Yes, you. I'm celebrating my 3rd year now on the station and will be expanding the show to a global network as well. You may now find the Sheilamac Show on all major podcasting channels, and if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, all the episodes are now available for viewing there as well. And I'm asking you for a quick favor. If you like the show, please help support the spread of this reboot channel on YouTube as well. My goal is to help as many people as possible through our interesting times to rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your business and personal life. I also wanted to share a little bit more about how I got here, what I do now, and how designing a business career and life on your terms is more than possible at any age or stage in life. I am an enterprisingly forward-thinking consultant, show host, and best-selling author. But how did I get here? Well, I began my career as an entrepreneur and property investment strategist back when I was 23 years young, when I boldly quit my government job with NASA JPL to open my first of 5 large gift stores while also starting to invest in property. I got to work with some of the world's most loved companies, such as negotiations on leases with Warner Brothers and winning trips to London as the top-selling Crabtree and Evelyn provider in the U.S. for multiple years. My stores were built on heart as I gave back to the community I came from. So now, some of you know this and some of you don't know this, but as a young girl with parents who were not well enough to care for me, I was homeless at age 10, then in foster care, where it was really hard to get a job while in the system. I finally emancipated at the age of 15 to start college early. While running my stores, I worked with a government program. Back then, it was called Job Training Partnership Act, making my stores an open source training site where close to 200 at-risk youth started their careers. Yes, I began my career helping business leaders and working professionals to design a life they love where they can have success in their careers and get to the business of life. See, a funny thing happened along the way. When I first opened my gift store, it was kind of crazy because I was this young upstart. That's what a lot of the store owners called me. My first store was in Montrose, California, in this sweet little hometown shopping park with other stores and restaurants nearby. And so I was the young upstart that didn't know what she was doing. At least that's what everybody said. And I didn't really care what they said. At that age, you know, their opinion was like, I don't really care. So that was probably a really good thing because I stayed focused on what I needed to do. And I had negotiated to lease out a 5,000 square foot gift store that needed a lot of work, and I got free rent and for about 6 months, and I had to start making the rent, which was $5,000 a month, which was a lot of money back then, $1 a square foot. And so I had to learn and relearn. I finally did hire quite soon in the game. I did hire a marketing expert, branding expert, I guess back then. And that lady really helped me to figure things out when I first started. And when you first start a business, especially when you're young, it was like I had no idea what to do, but I needed to learn because my rent was going to start coming due every month. And over that time, I started having more success. I did crazy things like stayed open until almost midnight every night, along with the restaurants who were very close to my store, while everybody else closed shop at about 5 or 6 p.m. So I was making more money from the start, and I just really, my store was to help my kids, and the products I sold was whatever the community wanted. I sold lots of things to people in the entertainment industry. I worked with cruise ships. I worked with many different people in the community. And later on, the store owners actually came to me and asked me if I would consult them and help them. I actually started buying my other buildings because I didn't like the idea of paying rent for years and years and years and not building equity. So I did get my real estate license through that and invested and bought my other 4 store buildings. And lots of the other store owners worked with me, paid me to consult and help them do what I was doing. And I didn't really even know it was called consulting. I just knew how to figure it out, I guess. And so that's how I started my career. And now, I raised 6 children, all that, and now they're grown. And so I get to come to work every day and do what I naturally do best as an enterprising and forward-thinking business leader. Through my show, courses, and live events, I guide entrepreneurs and working professionals like you through the profitable steps of building a business, creation to expansion, marketing from planning to implementation, wealth preservation through strategic planning and, yes, real estate investing, and lifestyle design so that you can earn more while getting back to the business of living your best life. So I do invite you to tune in here to KCAA Radio, and also I would really appreciate it if you went to my YouTube channel, SHEILAMACSHOW, and gave a subscribe and a listen to some of your favorite shows. And I do have some other exciting things, including a free gift to thank you. So if you go to www.sheilamac.com, that's SHEILAMAC, sheilamac.com, there you can get a free gift to get started on your reboot this year. And now, back to the show. It's the holidays, and I'm dealing with an overwhelming sense of grief that is secondary to the loss of my family members that occurred during the holiday season almost 2 years ago. I'm attempting to resume my family traditions with a smile on my face, but my heart is troubled and sad. I'm grateful for the numerous friends and my support network that I am blessed with. However, I'm hoping that you can offer some insight and suggestions to help me keep my healing heart in perpetual motion this time of year. Thank you. Sincerely, Blue Christmas. Dear Blue Christmas, I'm so sorry for your loss. Losing more than one family member during the holidays is very difficult. I can't imagine. And one of the things that has helped me get through holiday seasons, because I've lost quite a few family members myself, was to change my holiday celebrations, to celebrate my loved ones that have crossed over in a different way, gave me a new tradition. And that may help you as well. I'm not sure how you celebrate your holidays or how you did in the past, but save a place for them at the table, maybe have a ceremony for them and send them love, and then stop and pause for a moment before you plan your holidays this season and think about what, if they were living with you today now, what would they want for you as your relative? What would they want to see for your happiest holiday this year? For myself, with my children, I think what I would want for my children is for them to continue to celebrate and live their best life every day, including on the holidays. And I would appreciate their memories and thoughts of me. So I think that may help. And just forming new traditions. Because whenever there is a life shift, whatever it is, divorce, or kids grow up and they have their own family units, they can't travel to see us, whatever it is, our holidays are going to shift over time. And grieving a loss of more than one loved one is the hardest, for sure. Yet these are things that are going to happen. And so to have a new form of holiday
will make a big difference for you. I hope this helps. As always, I wish you life, love, laughter, and light. Thank you for listening to Dear Sheila. Tune in again right here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.